2025 has been an awesome year for G.I. Joe Classified. There's been so many pickups this year, and in this video, we're going to go over our top 10 G.I. Joe Classified action figures. At our number 10 spot, I have the Legacy Police Officer and Firefighter. I'm cheating right off the bat, counting these two figures in one. Now, these are not named characters. They're not part of G.I. Joe storylines or lore. They're just kind of this offshoot thing. You know, I think this Legacy series, I'd like to see it continue further. So I know we've gotten a parachuter before. I know that's not the right word. But now to get some civilians, right? Civilian or civil workers, as in the firefighter and the police officer, this is great. These are great background characters. You can use them in your G.I. Joe Classified display. You can use them in your Marvel Legends display. You can get a whole bunch of them. They came with different head sculpts, so you can mix and match. They each came with some pretty impressive loadouts, which I think is awesome. Even though most of their body is reuse, I think it's smart reuse. So this is mostly Snow Job, but they did a great job repainting it, giving him that reflective kind of silver all over the body. And I'm sure this is reused from another figure. I just don't know who, but really happy with the way these guys came out. Love all the accessories, and I'm gonna have fun putting these on whatever display I feel like putting them on. So number 10 goes to the Legacy Firefighter and Police Officer. The number 9 spot goes to Snake Eyes. I forget which version this is, version 3 or version 4. And I know most people love the original version of Snake Eyes, but I was a little too young for that. This version of Snake Eyes is the Snake Eyes that I grew up with. Now, I didn't have this one in the original O-ring style figure. However, I did have it in the 12-inch doll version of the figure, and I love that. That was my only 12-inch G.I. Joe, and I was kind of waiting for this Snake Eyes, so when it did come out, I was pretty excited, and I was even more excited to see that it actually is a badass figure. So taking the sentimental value out, I think this is actually one of the best releases of the year. So I think they did a good job with the accessories, actually putting some paint on them, giving them some color. I do think this is the first Snake Eyes to be featured with the dual katanas. Got some nice red paint there, some nice symbols on his gauntlet, and he has the grappling hook. I think I do remember the doll coming with a grappling hook. If not a grappling hook, he definitely came with a gun that made some noise and a sword. But they did awesome on this figure. So the buck underneath looks pretty plain, but they did some sculpt work for the vest. I love the mask. Like, I love this version of Snake Eyes. I think it's more visually appealing than just the typical black. So for my number 9, we're going with Snake Eyes. At the number 8 spot, we have Sci-Fi. First, if you've been watching the channel and you see a lot of my taste in figures, you know anything black and green is going up on the shelf. I didn't have Sci-Fi as a kid, but when I did see this figure, I knew I had to have him. I love when G.I. Joe gets into the wacky sci-fi aspect of it, more so than the military. Great weapon, great effect, and I like the features that you have with the mask. You can swap that full mask off, put a half visor on, and I'm glad they went with more of a toned down green, although I would have been happy for more of a day glow, brighter green. I think I would have been happy either way. So maybe this will get a re-release, it'll be a little brighter. If so, I might actually get another one, but just all around cool figure. The metal paint on it, the chrome, I think it came out pretty well. I love all the detail on the boots and the actual backpack. So this is a great figure. My number 8 spot goes to Sci-Fi. At my number 7 spot, we have the polar bear. Now, I have no attachment to that all blue Sunbow styled Snake Eyes. I really didn't want another Snake Eyes. And I really love the animals that G.I. Joe Classified brings. So to get a giant polar bear, I think they did an excellent job with the sculpt, with the articulation. I think it looks fantastic. You do have some battle damage on the arm, which is pretty cool. So I know this is from the movie, I believe, but if they release anything with animals, I'm going to get it. I think the only one I didn't get was the Cobra Commander with the lizard, but I didn't really like that version of Cobra Commander. So this polar bear, I think it's great, and I really only got it for him. So that other Snake Eyes, I might, put him in the back of my display because I didn't really care for him. But for my number 7 pick goes to this polar bear. And my number 6 spot goes to Xandar. Finally, we can pair him up with Zorana. This one came out towards the beginning of 2025, even though I think I pre-ordered it in 2024. But another great addition to the Dreadnoughts. Always going to pick up the Dreadnoughts. There's a few we're missing. Thrasher. I think the other one's Zanzibar, who I think was the only one I had as a kid, and Thrasher. I had those both. But there's just so much great stuff about this figure. So the hairstyle, the earrings, the face paint, the pink bandana. So already it got that pop of color. But then all the gold on his armor pieces, I think, makes this guy really stand out. Got the gold part of his boot. So, you know, there's some variation in the sculpt there, the belt buckle, and then some really cool weapons. So one of my favorites of the year. It came out so early that I almost thought it was part of last year's. But for my number 6 pick, we're going with Xandar. At number 5, we have the Ghost Viper and Direwolf. The Direwolf, not so much. I know it's just a repaint or redo of Timber, but for the Ghost Viper, another cool kind of mythical character. So I know he goes with another character. We'll talk about him later. But this one came with an awesome loadout, different head sculpts, different display options. Really cool. Again, I love that black and green motif. I like to keep this green skull on. It reminds me of hologram everything back from the 90s. I think I had Pogs or necklaces that had the skull hologram on it. But just really cool, really fun figure. The green all over with the translucent plastic, I think, is a fantastic touch. And just a really fun figure that I don't think is based off anything. Maybe he's in the comics. I don't know. You can let me know down in the comics. But this is definitely a fun release. And I think adding in those extra head sculpts, adding in the green wolf. The only thing, I do wish this was glow in the dark. I kind of thought it was. And when I got it and realized it wasn't, I was a little disappointed. But I think it's still an awesome figure nonetheless. So for number 5, we have Ghost Viper. At number 4, we have Darklon. This is a figure I had as a kid, was always a go-to villain. I believe this is the brother of Destro? Not too sure. But they made this character who was already badass looking and made him even more badass. So love the modern day updates while keeping the original kind of motif of the original figure. They gave him another cool alternate head sculpt and some pretty cool weapons and lots of paint. Lots of detail and love went into this figure, not just on the actual figure, but the accessories as well. Now, he is known for having this big, wacky blaster gun. My only problem with it is that mine came straight out of the package, bent to all hell. And then also, he doesn't come with a hand to actually hold it. So I don't display him with his iconic gun, even though I would like to. I think that's what doesn't bring this figure higher on the list, is that his accessories, that one rifle was a little disappointing, which is what I wanted to display him with. But he's still a great figure. That face sculpt, I think, just is awesome. Kind of the menacing eyes that he has. It just looks great on the shelf. Again, the pop of color, the weirder the better for G.I. Joe Classified for me. So, number 4, Darklon. At number 3, we have Easy Breezy Beautiful Covergirl. This is version 2 that I didn't know I needed. I didn't have problems with version 1, with the exception of her face looking a little older, right? They showed the package artwork for this figure and she looked a lot younger, but the actual figure gives her a more mature look. I do love the updated version. I think it's nice to have both of them on the shelf at the same time. I mean, these are virtually 2 different characters, so that's a plus right there. They gave her most of the same accessories, but I think they put a little more love and deco into the ones that she came with. If not, I might have switched them out. I think that's what I did. These might have come with the original one. Either way, the face sculpt is gorgeous. I love all the personality she has. And you can put the other face sculpt onto your other Covergirl body if you wanted to. But I like imagining that they're 2 separate characters on the shelf. And I like to display her with the head sculpt with the hat. But this is definitely a well-wanted upgrade. And again, I wasn't really looking for another Covergirl, but when I saw this one, I knew I had to have her. So number 3, Covergirl. At the number 2 spot, we have Pythona. I think this is probably technically the best G.I. Joe figure of the year. And I mean that in terms of sculpt, design, everything, loadout. Just a good release, right? This one was easily accessible. It was the New York Comic Con exclusive. Thank God it wasn't a pain in the butt to actually get. But they put so much love into this figure. all that kind of detail work all over the body. She came with some great accessories, 2 different head sculpts. I prefer the open mouth one. And then they put a lot of love into her cape. So not just the texture, but these kind of cuts in there. You can put the hood over, and then the inside, a different material, kind of a felt. But just overall beautiful figure. I don't think we have many purple G.I. Joe figures, so to kind of get that pop of color on the shelf in a G.I. Joe display, which would mostly be made of military people, I think this is a great release. So it's the only one of Cobra I have. I skipped out on the other one that came out. Not really my cup of tea, but this figure was a must-have, and I'm really happy I got her because she's fantastic. Now for some honorable mentions, I'm going to put Cold Slither as one of my honorable mentions. It was a great box set. I think the figures were cool, but they're an honorable mention because most of them are characters we've already gotten, and this is more just a fun, kind of goofy part of the collection. It's a really weird episode of G.I. Joe. If you haven't watched it, it's probably free on YouTube. I mostly got it for the accessories. I thought they were just kind of cool looking accessories, so maybe that's weird, but just having them on the shelf with all the instruments and all the gear is super fun. Their actual bodies are pretty plain. There's some cool paint work, cool design work, but I wouldn't necessarily put these in the top 10s. But it is a fun and creative 4-pack. It wasn't as hard to get as some other San Diego Comic-Con exclusives, so grateful for that at least. But I just love how these look on the shelf with all their instruments. I also love that when I saw this design for Zartan, I knew we were going to get that Ninja Force Zartan, which has been rumored or I think officially announced yet. I think that's pretty safe to say. So first honorable mention goes to Cold Slither. Second honorable mention goes to Dr. Mindbender. I missed out on this Comic-Con exclusive, so I was really happy to get it on the retro card. I'm pretty sure this came early in the year, so I almost forgot it was part of this year as well, but really happy to kind of round out those Cobra villains, and I just love the design. So, I mean, he looks the way he should, just kind of a wacky design. The monocle, they put the Cobra logo on the jacket, which is really cool, and he always comes with an interesting loadout. So probably because this figure is kind of a rehash of another figure, a re-release, great for people like me who missed out on the exclusive, and you need to have him within your villains. So Dr. Mindbender is another honorable mention. And my last honorable mention goes to Slice and Dice. I'm one of those people that probably would have preferred to get these guys in more of their neon bright colors, but as a release on their own, I think they're fantastic. I'm pretty sure they'll release them in those other colors, but I think they threw in a lot of accessories for these guys, maybe too many. I don't think we'll ever say that, but it came with a lot of useless stuff that I'm probably never going to use. I think their design is really cool. Where these guys kind of lose me a little bit is that they came with weapons that had tons of paint on them, and then they came with weapons that are just plain molded gray plastics. So they could have put a little more love into it, right? If you're gonna put that extra detail into some of the accessories and not all, kind of is disappointing. So they are great looking figures. They're probably not what I would have imagined for Slice and Dice. So for that, they're an honorable mention. At the number 1 spot, I have Crystal Ball. This guy is probably on most people's top 10, if not number 1, but all around, they took a figure that was a peg warmer back in the 80s. Nobody really wanted this old guy in their collection, and they took what was pretty lame and made it pretty awesome. So overall design, they gave him a younger look. They still kept that same face makeup, gave him some cool, dark tattoos of the occult, which I think is awesome. Some cool necklaces, the fur jacket, and I love every accessory this guy comes with. So the shield, you can pop that off and it could be kind of that hologram, and the flaming sword is really cool. You can pair this guy with your Ghost Viper, so he can kind of transform him into that snake and that wolf. Fantastic. And this is just a figure that has a lot of shelf presence. I think he looks super awesome. So who knew that they were going to take this lame-ass character and turn him into someone really awesome that everyone kind of agree is a great figure. So my number 1 spot goes to Crystal Ball. And there you have it, folks. This is my top 10 with some honorable mention. GIJOE Classified releases of the year. I think this was a great year for G.I. Joe Classified. It had a little something for everybody. If you're a traditional G.I. Joe collector, something for you. If you're more into the wacky, sci-fi, kind of weird, then this was also a great year. So for me, personally, you get into the ninja realm, you get into the wacky realm, and I'm all for it. So probably one of my favorite lines to collect this whole year. And I remember there was a year when I said I'm not going to collect G.I. Joe Classified. Now look at me. I think this one year, 28 pickups, all just from 2025. So with that being said, hope you enjoyed this countdown. I have a few more coming. And until the next episode, we'll catch you next time.